वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्त हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। So today we are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 8, texts 34 through 36. So anyone who wants to join, who wants to read, like you can start. I'm going to start the screen share. So you can also directly read from your computer or cell phone, whichever you're using. Anybody wants to read?
Okay, Mataji, I will read. Text 34. 4.8.34 Guna adhikan muddam lipset anukrosham guna adamat maitrim samanad anvichen nataper abhibhuyate. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Every man should act like this. When he meets a person more qualified than himself, he should be very pleased. When he meets someone less qualified than himself, he should be compassionate towards him. And when he meets someone equal to himself, he should make friendship with him. In this way, one is never affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. Generally, when we find someone more qualified than ourselves, we become envious of him. When we find someone less qualified, we deride him. And when we find someone equal, we become very proud of our activities. These are the causes of all material tribulations. The great sage Narada therefore advised that a devotee should act perfectly. Instead of being envious of more qualified man, one should be jolly to receive him. Instead of being oppressive to a less qualified man, one should be compassionate towards him, just to raise him to the proper standard. And when one meets an equal, instead of being proud of one's activities before him, one should treat him as a friend. One should also have compassion for people in general who are suffering due to forgetfulness of Krishna. These important functions will make one happy within this material world. Thank you.
Thank you, Antaranga Seva Mataji. Text 35. Ruchi Mataji or Premarasa, would you like to read?
I can.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Ego Iraja, Manam, Darshita Kripya Punsam, Durdasho Asmin Dvi Destu Yaha. Translation. Can you? Yeah, thanks. Dhruv Maharaj said, "My dear Lord Naraji, for a person whose heart is disturbed by the material conditions of happiness and distress, whatever you have so kindly explained for attainment of peace of mind is certainly a very good instruction. But as far as I am concerned, I am covered by ignorance, and this kind of philosophy does not touch my heart." Purport. There are various classes of men. One class is called akamis, referring to those who have no material desire. Desire must exist, either material or spiritual. Material desire arises when one wants to satisfy one's personal senses. One who is ready to sacrifice anything to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead can be said to have spiritual desire. Dhruva did not accept the instruction given by the great Saint Narad because he thought himself unfit for such instruction given by the great Saint Narad because he thought himself unfit for such instruction which prohibited all material desires. It is not a fact, however, that those who have material desires are prohibited from worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the essential instruction from the life of Shiva.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada. Hello? Hare Krishna?
Mataji, welcome. Please.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to make sure I was okay. I was that I was on. Hare Krishna.
Yes, we are reading from chapter 8. Mataji is reading text 35.
35. Thank you so much.
Rishi Mataji, now you can read again.
Following Mommy's model from YouTube.
This is the essential instruction from the life of Dhruva. He frankly admitted that his heart was full of material desires. He was very much affected by the cruel words of his stepmother, whereas those who are spiritually advanced do not care about anyone's condemnation or adoration. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that persons who are actually advanced in spiritual life do not care for the dual behavior of this material world. But Dhruv Maharaj frankly admitted that he was not beyond the affliction of material distress and happiness. He was confident that the instruction given by Narad was valuable, yet he could not accept it. The question raised here is whether or not a person afflicted by material desires is fit to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The answer is that everyone is fit to worship him. Even if one has many material desires to fulfill, he should take to Krishna consciousness and worship the Supreme Lord Krishna, who is so merciful that he fulfills everyone's desires. Through this narration, it will become very clear that no one is barred from worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even if one has many material desires.
Thank you, Rishi Mataji. Would Primarisa or Govardhan Leela Mataji, one of you would like to read text 36? And this is the last verse for today.
I can read Mataji's. Okay, this is 36, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Atapi me avinitasya shatram goram upeyushaha surucha durvacho baner nabine shrayate riti. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
My dear Lord, I'm very impudent for not accepting your instructions, but this is not my fault. It is due to my having been born in a Kshatriya family. My stepmother, Suruchi, has pierced my heart with her harsh words. Therefore, your valuable instruction does not stand in my heart. Purport. It is said that the heart or mind is just like an earthen pot. Once broken, it cannot be repaired by any means. Dhruva Maharaj gave this example to Narada Muni. He said that his heart, having been pierced by the arrows of his stepmother's harsh words, felt so broken. Wait a minute, let me turn this page here. that nothing seemed valuable but his desire to counteract her insult. His stepmother had said that because he was born from the womb of Suniti, a neglected queen of Maharaj Uttanapad, Dhruva Maharaj was not fit to sit either on the throne or on his father's lap. In other words, according to his stepmother, he could not be declared king. Dhruva Maharaj's determination, therefore, was to become king of a planet, exalted even beyond that possessed by Lord Brahma, the greatest of all the demigods. Dhruva Maharaj indirectly informed the great sage Narada that there are four kinds of human spirit: the Brahminical spirit, the Kshatriya spirit, the Vaishya spirit, and the Shudra spirit. The spirit of one caste is not applicable to the members of another. The philosophical spirit enunciated by Narada Muni might have been suitable for a Brahmana spirit, but it was not suitable for a Kshatriya. Dhruva frankly admitted that he was lacking in Brahminical humility and was therefore unable to accept the philosophy of Narada Muni. The statements of Dhruva Maharaj indicate that unless a child is trained according to his tendency, there is no possibility of his developing his particular spirit. It was the duty of the spiritual master or teacher to observe the psychological movement of a particular boy and thus train him in a particular occupational duty. Dhruva Maharaj, having already been trained in the Kshatriya spirit, would not accept the Brahminical philosophy. In America, we have practical experience of this incompatibility of the Brahminical and Kshatriya temperaments. The American boys who have simply been trained as Shudras are not at all fit to fight in battle. Therefore, when they are called to join the military, they refuse because they do not have Kshatriya spirit. This is a cause of great dissatisfaction in society. That the boys do not have the Kshatriya spirit does not mean that they are trained in Brahminical qualities. They are trained as Shudras, and thus in frustration, they are becoming hippies. However, as soon as they enter the Krishna consciousness movement being started in America, they are trained to meet the Brahminical qualifications, even though they have fallen to the lowest conditions as Shudras. In other words, since the Krishna consciousness movement is open for everyone, people in general can attain the Brahminical qualifications. This is the greatest need at the present moment. For now, there are actually no Brahmanas or Kshatriyas, but only some Vaishyas and, for the most part, Shudras. The classification of society into Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras is very scientific. In the human social body, the Brahmanas are considered the head, the Kshatriyas are the arms, the Vaishyas are the belly, and the Shudras are the legs. At the present moment, the body has legs and a belly, but there are no arms or head, and therefore society is topsy-turvy. It is necessary to reestablish the Brahminical qualifications in order to raise the fallen human society to the highest standard of spiritual consciousness. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
So we'll go back to review what we have read. So Antaranga Seva Mataji, I think you read the first verse. So if you would like to share first. This is text 34.
Yes, Mataji, I will try. I think this is Narad Muni speaking to Dhruva Maharaj. And he meets Dhruva Maharaj because Dhruva Maharaj has been advised by his mother to go to the forest and meditate on the Lord. And Dhruva Maharaj has been insulted by his stepmother and he could not take it because of his Kshatriya spirit. So Narad Muni meets him and then he says that, why are you so disturbed? by this honor and dishonor. You are just a 5-year-old boy, and 5-year-old boys, they are engaged in some sporting activities, they play. And why do you want to go and meditate in the jungle? It will be too difficult for you. uh, the process is also not very easy, so I don't think you should do this. And Narad Muni advises that better is to be satisfied with whatever the Lord has given you. That is the best way to be happy. So here Narad Muni is giving him an advice that every man should act like this. When he meets a person more qualified than himself, he should be very pleased. So normally this is not what we do. When we meet someone who are more qualified than ourselves, who have more achievements, or they are materially more prosperous, we feel very envious of them, because we think, oh, I want that. But to get something is also has to be sanctioned by the Lord, has to be according to our karma. Only then we can get it. So, and we don't even think that to achieve for those material achievements also that person has worked hard. So normally we are told that instead of being envious, it is better to be inspired by someone who has achieved a lot in their life. So this Narad Muni is telling him that it is better that instead of being we should not be envious of those who are more qualified than us. So I think what he means here, I may be wrong, please correct me later, that Narad Muni is saying that okay, if Suruchi is thinking that she is better than you, she is more privileged than you, and you should have taken birth in her womb, it's okay. Think that yes, that is what it is, and be satisfied. Why do you want to go to the forest and then meditate? And why so much trouble do you want to take? Why don't you be satisfied? And then he also gives him an advice that uh, you should be very pleased to meet those who are very qualified instead of being envious. Sometimes we run away when we like, even in relatives this happens, that if someone is a big achiever or something like that, they don't even want to go to their homes. That no, I don't want to go. it, just simple things like, yeah, someone has got very nice marks in 12th standard, and then the other child doesn't want to go because he is going to be compared. So that happens. So Narad Muni is saying that no, you should be pleased to meet such a person who is more qualified than you. And then he says that you should be compassionate to those who are less qualified. So that is also the problem in human society, that we normally deride those who are less qualified than us, deride them by various statements or by our actions. We show them that you are inferior, you don't have much knowledge. This happens in devotee circle also. If someone is not having a lot of knowledge of scripture, or they are not up to the mark, instead of having compassion and helping them to become good devotees, we normally don't treat them properly. We try to avoid them, or maybe behind their backs we make fun of them. So Narad Muni is saying that that is also not good. If someone is lower than you, you should be compassionate to them. And then he says that if someone is equal to you, you should make friendship with them instead of being proud and showing your achievements very proudly. If they are of your same level, they are your peers, then better to make friendship with them. So here Narad Muni, he is actually testing Lord Dhruva, because before giving any knowledge, the Guru is going to test you. He is going to test how determined you are, whether you are really wanting it very badly. Then only then he will be ready to give you this most confidential knowledge, because Krishna is not so cheap. We have to be very ready to to understand this higher knowledge. So even for material achievements, if we have to be very determined, we have to be ready for so many sacrifices. So for this higher knowledge, it's not so easy. So the guru has to test the disciple. So here I think Narad Muni is testing him, whether he really wants to meet the Lord and whether he is qualified even to follow my instructions. That's all I have, Mataji. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Antaranga Seva Mataji. Yeah, thank you for sharing many practical points about dealings with devotees and how we can improve. Thank you, Mataji. So I believe Ruchi Mataji read next. Ruchi Mataji, are you ready for text 35?
So, yes, I'm just trying to find it in my book. What text is it, Mataji?
Chapter 8.
35, right? Okay, so so Dhruv Maharaj said that Naraji, for a person whose heart is disturbed by the material conditions of happiness and distress, whatever you have so kindly explained for attainment of peace of mind is certainly a good instruction, but as far as I am concerned, I am covered by ignorance, and this kind of philosophy does not touch my heart. So, like many times, um, like at least I have come personally in my uh, uh, life many times when I am actually faced by practical problems. Um, if somebody have wronged me, or the material energy or the modes are acting on me, uh, like even if be a thing like I have to leave my body and the fear of that or whatever, then people then we have it in, read it so many times that one should not get disturbed by the dualities of material nature, heat and cold, stress and victory and defeat, and all this. One should not get disturbed by all of this, and be not affected by one person being very successful, like it was said in the earlier excerpt, and be content with whatever one has. And but sometimes when the moods are acting very powerfully, and when one is very attached in their mind and spirit with something, and they feel they have been wronged and they have not got a fair chance, then it is very difficult for us to control our mind at that time and to contemplate on the higher spiritual principles, uh, because I guess everybody's mind wants pleasure, and nobody wants to deal with uh, negative emotions, or like nobody wants to deal with the realities which are sometimes very negative, in the sense which are sometimes not so pleasant. And the mind is always looking for pleasant things, but that pleasant thing, whatever one finds happiness in a pleasant thing, will not last forever. It is like everything is temporary. So whatever object we find is going to give us happiness, maybe after a very short period, the same object, if it is not directed for service to others, or if it is for personal gratification, it will start to give, that same thing will start to give the person distress. So it is not very easy to like give up this pull of the mind which wants always pleasure and happiness, and it is not ready to accept the realities of life, and wants to keep seeking pleasure. So um, so like here in this purport, um, it is like um, very clear. I mean, I see the lessons of my life very much reflected in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Like even today, I was feeling like, that I have all these material desires sometimes, and how do I deal with it? And then suddenly came to my mind that, I should just pray to the Lord. So that is just so true that uh, that when we are rising up in our spiritual life, or when we are closer to God, then our material desires are not so much. We have more spiritual desires to please God and to do everything according to his will. But when we get entangled more by the material energy, then our desires become material. But we shouldn't think that because I am not completely free from material desires, and because I have this material desire, I should not go to God with this material desire, because he is a spiritual being and I have all these material desires, and I should not be asking him to fulfill my material desires. That is what the purport says clearly, that um, material desire arise when one wants to satisfy one's personal senses. So one who is ready to, because uh, like I said earlier, God is the touchstone who can even turn those material desires gradually into spiritual desires. Because very soon we can have realizations from that material desire that it is actually not good for us and it will only give us pain. And when we have that realization, we turn our desires into spiritual desires. So, but when the great saint Narad Muni was instructing Dhruv Maharaj, um, because he thought himself unfit for such instruction. So many times I've seen, uh, like at least personally, that I do not start a spiritual practice because I feel that I might be unfit for it, and that that um, approaching God, sometimes I feel that I am I shouldn't approach him because I've committed so many mistakes, and he must be really upset with me. But that is the thing that that Dhruv Maharaj is facing, that he feels that he felt that he is unfit for such instruction, because Narad Muni is saying that he should that you should have spiritual desires to just satisfy the supreme personality of Godhead. And he is like, um he is thinking that I still have these material desires, but I want to have my um, a place in my father's kingdom, my rights as in my father's kingdom. And I am and somewhere in his mind he wanted to prove that he is the better he is the better son, or like that he should be given his place. And so and he frankly admitted that his heart was full of material desires, and he was very much affected by the cruel words of his stepmother. Whereas those who are spiritually advanced do not care about anyone's condemnation or adoration, because um, so he is accepting that he is still affected by uh, the harsh words of his mother, and he is still being affected by all these material modes, and it is difficult to see beyond all this material energy into the spiritual world. It does not He cannot go beyond the hurt, he cannot see uh, beyond the hurt and the sense of like revenge, or sense of like trying to get his rightful place. So in Bhagavad Gita, it says that persons who are actually advanced, they do not care for the dual behavior of this material world. But Dhruv Maharaj frankly admitted that he was not beyond the affliction of material distress and happiness, and he was confident that that Narad Muni's instruction he could not accept it because he thought that he was not beyond the affliction of material distress and happiness because he could not see beyond the material energy and he could not see into the spiritual aspect of things, and he could not give up this desire for establishing his place in his father's kingdom and being the better son and like having his rightful place and the need for getting back or for revenge. Um, he thought that he could not accept Narad Muni's instructions. So here the question comes whether such persons should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And here the answer is that everyone is fit to worship him. Even if one has many material desires, he should take to Krishna consciousness and worship the Supreme Lord, who is so merciful that he fulfills everyone's desires. Through this narration, it will become very clear that no one is barred from worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even if one has many material desires. Um, like how once I went to a certain Gauriya Math only, and they were like saying that in America they have made this the system that whoever comes, they just start telling the person to take up the beads and chant and not realize that that person has not given up his material desires, and they are not really brahmacharis, and they are not really like brahmacharis. They are still in the materialistic form of life, and they give them the beads to chant. And I was just thinking in my mind that I had read in the books that everyone is supposed to worship the Lord in spite of whatever material that if they might not be brahmacharis, but they still have the right to worship. Not the right, but they should be. So that is because otherwise we will get caught up in this material desires. Desires have no end. So one after the other desire, one after the other desire will come, but only God has the capacity to turn that desire into a spiritual right desire. So whatever we desire, he will give us in such a way that we are not very much hurt by it, and then sooner or later we go to God through that desire. So so yes, I mean that is the basic crux that anybody has the right to worship God, because he can only change our material desires to spiritual desires, and uh, it is only by his mercy that we can approach him. So the dilemma that Narad or that Dhruv Maharaj is facing, whether to accept Narad Muni's instruction is not worthwhile, because in the end he does follow the path and reach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But right now his um, dilemma is shown, which is reflected in many of our own dilemmas, whether some, because many times like we think that we condemn our material desires, but everything happens for a reason that I have realized. So like whenever we have wrongful material desires, we should just go and put it to God to like resolve it. If it is good for us, then we might get it. If it is not good for us, then He should show us a way out of that material desire. So if so in every situation, actually, we can worship uh, God. That is the main essential point. So this is my 2 cents.
So much, I can relate to everything that you have said. Um, yeah, whether we have material desires or spiritual desires or anywhere in between, we don't have to feel that we are unqualified to serve the Supreme Lord or seek His shelter. So, thank you so much for bringing that out. Govardhan Leela Mataji, text 36. Are you ready?
Yes. So again, um, Narada Muni is still instructing Dhruva Maharaj, but he's like, I'm so sorry that I can't accept your instruction, but look, I'm a Kshatriya. That's why, um, I was trained up as a Kshatriya, and that's why I can't help it. What my stepmother has said, it pierced me, and so I can't listen to what you're saying. I can't. It doesn't stand in his heart. First of all, it's just talking about this. The stepmother did say some harsh words, but um, since he was a Kshatriya, now our Guru Maharaj was saying this about Kshatriyas. He said, what does a Kshatriya do? They're trained to fight. They will fight, and they will actually, and they always, when they give their word about something, they will stick with that until they die. I mean, they will never go against their word. Okay. And so um, here we have this desire by Dhruva Maharaj to counteract what she said. It's in him. He's saying, "Oh, it's in me to do this. It's my desire is to counteract her insult." And this is all coming from. It's because I'm a Kshatriya, is what he's pointing out, and that his stepmother Suniti is saying. I'm sorry, I get the names mixed up. Saruchi, I think it is. She's the one who says, you're not fit to be a king. You can't sit on your father's lap or on his throne. Now, that's really a harsh thing to say to a Kshatriya, okay? But we've got these, then Dhruva Maharaj starts explaining in an informal way to Narada Muni these 4 types of human spirit. There's Brahminical, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. And so what is the spirit of one caste is not applicable to the members of the other caste. So what Narada Muni was saying to him and instructing to him was more in the Brahminical spirit. And he said, I have to admit, I'm not trained. I'm not trained in the Brahminical spirit. Okay. And so he said he didn't have this Brahminical humility. And so then he could not accept Narada Muni's philosophy. This was a very high philosophy. But even so, it doesn't matter. Dhruva Maharaj is saying that you have to be trained according to your tendency. And if you're not, so if you're trained to be a Kshatriya, your tendency is to do what a Kshatriya does. And it is the duty of the guru or the spiritual master to observe the devotee and to observe his movements and what is his spirit, okay, and train him in that particular duty, within one of the four castes, okay. Now this was at that time, okay, that we're talking about another yuga. This is totally different than today. Because Prabhupada is saying, look, there is a lot of incompatibility between the temperaments of Brahmins and Kshatriyas. And when Prabhupada came to America, he was not training Brahmins or Kshatriyas. He was training Shudras. Okay, they weren't fit to fight for battle. I can remember during the Vietnam War, all the young boys, they were supposed to be drafted, and they refused to go to war, and they would skip the country and go to Canada if possible. Okay, so they don't have today the warriors that were back in antiquity. Even like I'm thinking of the warriors, it always occurs to me like the warriors of Japan. Back in those days, they would fight. They were Kshatriyas. They had the spirit of being a Kshatriya. Today, there is a lot of dissatisfaction in society because we don't have a lot of true Kshatriyas, true warriors. Very few. I don't think there are hardly any at all. And unless they've been trained that way. And most are Shudras. They're not neither Brahmins. What Prabhupada found when he came to America, he didn't find Brahmins or Kshatriyas, he found Shudras. Okay, and so they were just hippies. And so when the Krishna consciousness movement started in America, Prabhupada trained them in Brahminical qualities to become a Brahmin. And so even if they were Shudras, and we've heard this again and again and again, it doesn't matter if you were trained up a certain way within the family. I was trained as this, so this is what I am. No, it's your behavior, it's your qualifications, how do you act. Even if you're a Shudra and you are open to learning about Krishna, then you can accept these Brahminical qualifications. And Prabhupada was able to instill these Brahminical qualities in many of the devotees when he first came. Now, obviously, some fell down, but Prabhupada wasn't here long enough to look after these boys for, years and years to come. Some fell down because they didn't really understand. But anyone, Prabhupada is saying, look, okay, in that time, there was this Kshatriya spirit. Today, there isn't. However, one can be trained. It doesn't matter what caste you're in. If you're a Kshatriya, if you're a Brahmin, a Shudra, a Vaishya. We do have some Vaishyas today, but anyone can attain those Brahminical qualifications. And that is because we don't have actually any Brahmanas or Kshatriyas. Okay, we just have mostly Shudras, very few Vaishyas, and this is Prabhupada says this is like a science. This is very scientific to classify people within those four. They're not ashrams, are they? I guess whatever. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. I forget the name for this, but I know it's on the tip of my tongue. So actually, the reason Prabhupada is saying the whole society is topsy-turvy. Why? Because we don't have the head and the arms. Okay, the Brahmanas are the head and the Kshatriyas are the arms. That we have Vaishyas, a few, that's the belly, and Shudras are the legs. So we have legs and a belly, but no arms or head. And therefore, society is topsy turvy. So that's why when Prabhupada came, he had to reestablish Brahminical qualifications, okay? Because of the society, he had to raise society to the highest standard of spiritual consciousness. And he did a very fine job. But unfortunately, the world is still in a state of being topsy turvy. And we have to reach even more people. Most people today are Shudras, and most have no spiritual qualification or spiritual consciousness. It's very, very difficult to find people anywhere now who have true beliefs in spirituality. That I've noticed this, even in families, as how to pronounce Ataranga Mataji was mentioning. Even in families, there's all kinds of competition, and instead of being happy for somebody in the family who does well, the people become envious and cruel. I've seen this repeatedly. And, before I came to Krishna consciousness, I probably did that to a few people, but I wasn't aware that that's what I was doing. I knew something wasn't right, but I wasn't quite sure what it was and how to change it either. That's the other piece. I mean, what I had been practicing was good as far as it goes, but it didn't go to the point where I could look and say, oh, if I'm doing this, I'm going to really get a consequence for this. Oh, and understand why it's important to know who the Lord is, and to know what my soul, who I am as a spirit soul. So yeah, in those time periods, I think people did think that their state of life or their duty was based on heredity, and it was to a certain degree. There's no doubt about it. If you're trained up as a kshatriya, there's a likelihood that you'll be one, but not necessarily. There are people that come from Brahminical families, and then you'll have them acting like Shudras. Some of the children will come out like Shudras. So it's a whole different world today in Kali Yuga. And that's why Prabhupada had to come to the West and reestablish Brahminical qualifications, because people I don't think anybody here knows what that really is, unless you've run across someone in Krishna consciousness, and that's the truth. They think that's some exotic word that comes from the East. They don't know what that is. They just say, oh, it's a priest, and that's about it. Okay, they don't understand the depth of what that means. Unless, like I said, unless they've run across these scriptures, or unless they've had a desire to advance spiritually themselves. So that's it. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Please feel free to correct me or add to this, or, whatever. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Govardhan Leela Mataji, for sharing. So we have a few minutes before we end for today. So please feel free to comment, share. From my side, like, all I wanted to share was the honesty and openness of Dhruv Maharaj to share with his spiritual masters that he's unable to follow the instruction. I had once asked Chandramali Maharaj the same question. I said, sometimes we receive an instruction from our spiritual masters, and I feel that I'm incapable of following that instruction. So, what should I do? Because generally, like, the tendency in me was to shy away from him and just keep quiet, and or feel guilty that I'm not able to follow the instruction. So Chandramali Maharaj, he took so much time just to explain that question, answer my question. He said that when a disciple is unable to follow an instruction given by the spiritual master, or completely not able to follow the instruction given by the spiritual master, he should go back. We can go back to the spiritual master and explain our situation, that we are unable to follow the instruction. In fact, I had done this several times before, um, but in now now I'm able to think about it. But at that time, it was not clear because I was so much involved in that whole situation, which was very um, difficult at that time. But the spiritual master is usually very merciful, and he's willing to guide his disciple to the next step in their spiritual life. So, if we are facing difficulty in following any instruction of our spiritual master, we can always go back and, in a humble mood, um, present the problems that we are facing. So that stood out for me. Anybody else would like to share any final comment before we end?
Hare Krishna. I was unable to hear the whole class. I had a call coming in and blah, blah, blah. So, but I just did hear what you were saying, Leela Mandri. And yes, that's about approaching guru if you can't follow an instruction. And I guess that comes with maturity in our Krishna consciousness, understanding the position of the guru, to understand, like, I'm from feeling like, oh, like you said, the honesty, where, like, if you can't come up to the standard on something, or you have a question and something's been, in your mind there for a while, yeah, as time goes on, it's just, I'm coming to the realization that, like, he's there to guide me. He's not there to judge me. And I think that, recently I'm realizing that, that, and I'm not thinking of anything in particular, any particular instructions, but just this inner feeling that, not that I'm not truthful, it's just that I'm not exposing my heart possibly as much as I could be, in the past. And just coming to the realization that, why did he take me on as a disciple? But because he thought that he could bring me to the position of love of Godhead. And so for me to fully benefit from from this relationship, it's, I tend to be a bit shy, but I'm realizing that that's not gonna promote, or it's not gonna bring about faster advancement. It's only when I can understand what his position is, and understand what I, as a disciple, need to, what the content of what I should be discussing with him, and through those two things, hopefully, I will one day achieve love of Godhead. So it's it's just about that honesty. And it's not that I've never wanted to follow. Like, time I hear anything from Gurudev in class, I try my best to follow. But it's I think that to further enhance progress, I have to be like, I have to expose my heart, totally. And I'm just coming to that point where I'm beginning to do that a little bit more than before. Anyway, it was just in response to the last sharing by Leela Mandri. So Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you, Manasi Ganga Mataji. I think it's a process. I think for me also it was a process. I had to really like open my heart, and then again my heart closed because of certain events, and then again learn to open my heart, and then again my heart closed. So it has been a process, but as you said, as I am able to stay and spend more of my years in Krishna consciousness, my faith in my spiritual master has definitely grown.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not that, it's because, as we open our eyes and begin to understand what he's capable of doing, that faith grows. Yeah.
Okay, Mataji's. Actually, there is so much that could be discussed, but we are 7:06. So we'll end for today, and we'll again meet tomorrow. So day after tomorrow is Nityanand Trayodasi on Thursday. So I'm not sure if devotees would be attending some program or classes online. But we can still have the class for those who are able to join. And tomorrow also, I'm not 100% confident how things are going to be at the temple. So, but those of you who will be joining, we'll continue with reading the verses. Thank you all very much for joining and for your kind presence here. It just helps me so much to be on this reading. Thank you. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Jai, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.